You're listening to All In. This is the podcast dedicated to helping you fulfill the mission of God in your life and around the world. I'm your host, Chuck Roper. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of All In. It's great to be with you. I've missed a couple of weeks of broadcasting due to some travel schedules. Just got back from the U.S. convention down in Anaheim. That was awesome. It was so good to see many of you and to hear the words of encouragement from you about how this podcast is helping you. You know, while I was there at the U.S. convention, I found myself talking to a lot of younger leaders, and I began to reflect back on something, and it's in the Old Testament, where priests, when they would reach the age of 50, they were to go into retirement and spend their retirement time training and mentoring the younger priest. You'd enter the priesthood at 30 and you would exit the priesthood at 50, and then you would be a mentor for the new priest. Well, I'm not ready to retire yet, but I did turn 50 this week. And so that was that's a milestone, 50. I don't know why it's different than 49, but it seems to be a milestone. So it got me to thinking about some stuff, about mentoring younger leaders and speaking advice into their lives. And if you listen regularly to this podcast, you'll know that towards the end of each interview, I always asked the guest if they could go back in time and give their 25-year-old self any advice, what advice would they give? Well, this week I want to explore that a little bit more. What advice do we give to younger leaders? And I want to share 10 things that I would share with younger leaders. But before we get into that, I just wanted to make a programming announcement that during the summer months of June, July, and August, I'm planning on doing 2 broadcasts a month rather than the weekly podcast. So we're shooting for the first and third week of every month to release this on Mondays, 1st and 3rd. There will be, from time to time, you can expect, hopefully there will be a bonus episode here and there, but the plan is 2 times a month for the summertime, because, hey, you're busy and I plan to go camping, and let's take advantage of the summertime while we can. Now, on to advice for young leaders. 10 things. Number 1, always connected equals never present. Here's what I mean by that. Walk around any mall, any public place, and you'll see hundreds of people, thousands of people, all with their noses stuck to their smartphones. They're surrounded by their friends, they're surrounded by their family and loved ones, but they're not present. They're on their phones, checking Facebook, answering text messages, sending emails, doing all sorts of things tied, slave-like, to that smartphone. Well, let me tell you about something I did back in approaching the Christmas holiday season. I thought to myself, I said, self, if you're going to have any downtime whatsoever during Christmas, you need to turn off all your notifications on your phone, because my phone goes off like yours all the time. So I turned off email, I turned off Facebook, I turned off Twitter, I turned off pretty much everything except text messaging, because normally my kids, if they need to get a hold of me, they don't do email, they do a text message, or if you're in Europe, that's a SMS. So I turned it all off, and the first few days it was complete withdrawal symptoms. Force of habit, check your phone, every 3 or 4 minutes, pull it out, look at it. Then you realize after a week, you realize 2 things. Hey, there's no messages. Second thing you realize, hey, I really like this. I found out I was actually able to be present with the people I was with. I could be present even in my own devotional time, not worried about the little pings and dings and vibrations of that little monster in my pocket or on the counter or on the desk buzzing at me, telling me, pay attention, pay attention. So I turned them all off, and I absolutely loved it. In fact, I loved it so much, I never turned them back on. That's right, folks. I went from this end of December until Wednesday of this week without turning on emails or anything else on my smartphone. I happen to use the iPhone, but on Wednesday, because we were at convention and I'd been in 10 days of meetings, my emails were getting so backed up that I had to take advantage of the convenience of the smartphone. So when I was standing in line at Starbucks to get coffee, I could answer emails. And when you're at Starbucks during convention, it's a very long line. So I was able to clear out inbox just while I was waiting. But then I would turn it off and then be present with the people that I was able to spend time with. So I would challenge you to try that. I was talking to one pastor friend of mine while there, and I said, just try it for a week. Try it for a few days and see how you like it. Because if you are always connected, you are never present. And you have a pretty good life. It's too bad you're missing it. Another thing that you could do in this is a practice that I've been trying to implement. I'm not 100% on it, but it is my aspiration and my goal that every week I take a tech Sabbath, that I will go a full 24 hours, one day a week, without email, without Facebook messaging, without anything, that I just have that one Sabbath where I am not available electronically. And I tell you, it is so refreshing for me to be able to do that. Not only a tech Sabbath, but to set up daily boundaries. For myself, when I wake up in the morning, I find that if I'm checking Facebook, if I'm checking any of those emails and any of that, the first couple of hours of my day, it completely ruins the rest of my day. It doesn't set me up for success. It sets me up for failure. I want to be proactive. So those first 2 hours that are very precious to me, those are times for coffee, for prayer, for reflection, for preparation for the day. That's special for me. And then at the end of the day, no emails, no text messaging, anything like that. So I try to set up those boundaries because really it's a good life, and I want to be there when it happens. So be present. Always connected equals never present. Learn how to be disconnected so you can reconnect with the humans that are actually there with you and the moments that are right there in front of you. Second piece of advice that I would give to you: find mentors who see your calling and not just your potential. This came up in a conversation I was having with a dynamic young leader. And the thing about being a dynamic young leader is everybody sees potential. They talk about what a high caliber this person might be. And someone who sees your potential, but not necessarily your calling, well, they can use you for themselves and their own personal benefits. They would look at you and say, "Oh, you're so gifted. I'd love to have you on my team so you could help me do this, this, and that." And that's not always bad, but hey, our assignment is to release destiny in each other and to release destiny into the called people. And so you find a person that sees not only your potential, but your calling, so that they can help you grow into who Jesus has shaped and called you to be. Third piece of advice I would give to young leaders is that your character is your destiny. We work so hard on learning computer skills, communication skills, all of those things that matter so much. But ultimately, your character is your destiny. Now, your character is formed by your daily choices. Every day you've got a choice to make. I have choices. Am I going to eat right? Am I going to exercise? Am I going to think right? Get my thoughts under control? Am I going to choose the right action? We choose these things every single day. Now, these choices that we make shape our habits. And then our habits, they shape our character. And our character, well, that shapes our destiny. So begin with every day making the right choices. It's those daily small choices. These are the things that I do and I choose that shape the person that I am becoming. Your character is your destiny. Fourth piece of advice I would give to young leaders is go slow. I was talking with a young man during the convention that I've gotten to know over the last few years, and he's a young church planter. He's got a young family, And he kind of had that look that young church planters with young families have, which is kind of the look that you would think a bullfrog would have during a hailstorm. That they're going, oh Lord, help me survive this. Everything's coming at me. Help me get through this. And I was talking to this young man, and I told him, you need to understand that the most demanding times in your life as a man, as a father, as a husband, happen simultaneous to the most demanding time in your ministry. You have this pressure cooker that you are in, and the best thing you can do right now is go slow. Your kids will be old much longer than they are young. Cherish these moments with them. Take time with them, because it goes by in a heartbeat. And that's one of the things I've thoroughly enjoyed about this stage of life as a grandparent. It's like a mulligan. It's a do-over in parenting, because as a young man wanting to make your mark in the world, I was planting a church, pioneering a church, and pastoring that church, and traveling and teaching and preaching and ministering in various locations. And boy, I tell you, next thing you know, the kids are grown. And so just slow down. It's okay. Go slow. A good friend of mine, Ken Baird, who lives in the United Kingdom, has this great, great saying. He says, hurry slowly. I really like that. You only have one life, folks, and you need to slow down so you can live it well. Here are a couple of things that I've done that have helped me to slow down. One is my journaling. Now, I know a lot of you don't like to journal, and that's okay. I was talking to a friend of mine last week, and he was talking about how he's finally getting into journaling, and he was kind of fought against it because his pastor one time had said, if you want to get close to God, you must journal. Well, that's not true, because we don't know if Jesus or any of the apostles or any of the prophets ever journaled, and it's not a rule, but it is a good tool for some of us. For me, I find that my mind is running way too fast for me to hear from God, because God is old and God is slow. And so I have to slow my mind down enough to be able to hear that still small whisper of the voice of God. And years ago, I had read a book called Ordering Your Private World by Gordon MacDonald, and he had talked in there about the value of journaling. And he had said in that book that if his house were to catch on fire and he could only grab one book out of the house, it would be his journal. Well, that particular story came vividly true to me 20-something years ago when we actually had lost our house in a fire. It was in depths of winter in the Northwest. Very cold. Wind chill factor was -50. And our house caught on fire. It was so cold the water on the fire trucks froze. And they couldn't put the fire out. And all they could do was watch the house burn to the ground. Debbie and I lost everything that we owned except the clothes that we were wearing. And the house was just devastated. But after the fire had been extinguished, the next day I was walking through the ruins. And back in the bedroom, our bedroom, we had a little roll-top desk that had somehow managed to get through most of the fire. And sitting on that desk was my journal. And I reached over and grabbed it. And that was, something plucked from the fire. Just like what Gordon MacDonald said. It was a touching moment to see that experience lived out. But journaling just helps me to slow my mind down, to be reflective, and to unwind and unwrap the things that are on my mind. A lot of times when I'm stressed and I'm worrying about stuff, I use my journal to name the thing, to write it down, to get it out of my mind and onto the paper. Your mind doesn't have a mind of its own. So you have to write this stuff down so you can get it out of your mind onto the paper. Then you can name it, you can identify it, and then you can move it forward if you need to fix it or to pray through it or any of those things that you need to do with the things that are occupying your mind. But journaling has always helped me. And then something else that I've recently started doing, this came out of a Christmas present from my daughter Victoria. She had bought me a gift card for this store called The Art of Shaving, and I'd never been to such a place. And it's like a spa for men. and you go in and you get this old-fashioned straight razor shave. And it's really, let me tell you folks, it's a very strange thing to sit in a chair and have some guy lather you up and come at your throat with a very sharp razor. But I endured. I sat there, and he did this. We talked, and by the end of that, I realized there's something that we have lost in our hurry-up world, and our disposable razors, and everything is disposable, and everything is in a hurry. That there's something that had been lost there, and so I ended up buying a safety razor and the old-fashioned brush. You brush your face. So in the mornings now, when it's mostly when I'm not living in a hotel room, because it's hard to carry that stuff around when you're traveling. So I still keep the disposable razor for that. But normally when I'm at my home, that's part of the ritual. It's just I have found it very relaxing to be able to go through that, because not because it's just the process of shaving, but it's that process of slowing down and being in the moment and just doing that, rather than a utilitarian process of you're in the shower, hey, let's just to get this over as quick as possible. But learning how to slow down, walk slowly through the crowds, walk slowly through life, so that you can connect and you can be there and you can cherish it. Even during this U.S. convention that I was just at, there would be times I say, I'm just going to walk slowly through the crowd, and it's amazing. I would have almost like divine appointments with people that would happen because I was walking through there slowly. Or I would yesterday before I flew home, I'd gone down to Starbucks and was having some coffee, and I was just sitting there writing some notes in my journal, and this guy walked up, and we ended up having about a 45 to 60-minute discussion that was very, very significant as we are moving forward and doing some church planting projects. But it was just one of those divine appointments, and that would have never happened if I'd have been rushing through the lobby with my nose stuck in my phone, or acting like I was in a rush. Just go slowly through the crowd. So slow down. Fifth piece of advice I'd give to young leaders is to grow deep. Learn to train your mind to think deeply, to feel deeply, to cultivate intentionality through reading. I'm amazed anymore at the number of leaders who do not do intentional reading, who do not do intentional life development, but grow deep through reading, through writing, through reflecting, mostly through taking time to be present in your life. Sixth piece of advice I'd give to young leaders is don't take yourself too serious. If you've got an inflated view of yourself, then you need to deal with that. Just don't take yourself too serious. Your assignment, yeah, that's serious, but don't take yourself too serious. But the flip side of that would be number 7, which is take Jesus very seriously. He's a big deal. And be passionately in love with Jesus Christ. Be close to him. Let his word strengthen you. Let his word shape you. Spend time daily in the word, in worship, drawing near to him. Jesus is a big deal. So take him seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. The 8th thing I would give to you as some advice is details matter. See, it says in the Old Testament, there's this verse, I think it is in the Song of Songs, it says, it's the little foxes that spoil the vine. Years ago, when I was a young musician and with great aspirations, I was in a conversation with Eddie, the drummer in our band, and he told me something I didn't believe. He said, when Van Halen, the rock group Van Halen, signs a contract, they require that they have a bowl of M&Ms, and all the brown M&Ms must be removed from that bowl. They can have no brown M&Ms in that bowl. And I just thought that was one of those crazy rumors that you hear spread around. And then one day I was listening to Eddie Van Halen being interviewed, and they asked him, is it true that you require a bowl of M&Ms but that all the brown M&Ms be taken out. And he goes, yeah, it's true. And he goes, well, why in the world do you do that? Do you not like brown M&Ms? He says, it had nothing to do with the M&Ms. It has to do with the details of the contract. We're going into these venues with tens of thousands of dollars worth of equipment. Our reputation is on the line. Our band is on the line. Our equipment is on the line. And it is essential that the details are taken care of. And so I insert this little clause in somewhere in the contract to make sure if they catch that and they make sure that the brown M&Ms are out of the bowl, then I'm pretty sure they've got everything else worked out and that everything's going to be good. And when I learned that, I thought, that is amazing. It really, the details do matter. There is a reason why the Germans make BMWs and Mercedes, and back when we had Yugoslavia, they made Yugos. Yugos didn't pay attention to the detail. The Germans pay attention to the details. And if you ever have gotten inside of a nice car where everything is, the attention to detail is specific and exact, you know what a quality experience that is. Well, it's the same thing in your life. The details do matter. Number 9 in this list of 10 pieces of advice for young leaders is prepare yourself for your highest ambition. Then you'll be ready if you achieve it. And if you don't achieve it, you'll still like the person that you become. Here's what I mean. Let's say that you have an ambition as a young leader to be the senior pastor of a large, thriving church. Well, what does it take to be the senior pastor of a large, thriving church? Maybe your goal is to be the president of a corporation, or to be a leader of some type of a ministry. And you don't know how you're going to get there, but you have an idea in your mind about what that kind of person would have to be like, what skills they would have to have, what they would need to be good at. Well, prepare yourself for that. Shape yourself for that. Develop the type of character and skills that would be your highest aspiration. And as you prepare for that, you will like the person that you become. Whether you get that job or not, you will find that being a person is better than having a position. But go for it, aim for it, and then if you never get it, you'll still like the person you become. Finally, number 10. You cannot delegate your own personal obedience to Jesus Christ. I was sitting in a room a few weeks ago with a group of leaders, and as can happen with leaders, we kind of went down the dark rabbit hole of complaining about the demands that people can place on our lives. That we get dozens of emails, sometimes hundreds of emails every day, and demands on your life for this, and in this particular group of leaders that I was with, we all serve in multiple nations, with multiple cultures, with multiple demands. And it would be easy in that environment to go into saying, and we don't have time for prayer, we don't have time for rest and reflection and taking a Sabbath, because you just feel all of those demands. And nobody's letting us have any rest. Well, if God's called us to observe the Sabbath, it's nobody else's responsibility but mine to make sure I do it. So I cannot delegate that to someone else. I can't tell my neighbor across the street, hey, will you hold me accountable and make sure I take a Sabbath? No one else is responsible for me. I have a responsibility to others, but no one else is responsible for my own obedience to Jesus. I can be accountable to them for my obedience, but they cannot be responsible for my obedience. I can't delegate it. I can't delegate my responsibility for the Great Commission. I've had thoughts at times, this is kind of funny and a true confession, I've had thoughts at times that it would just be wonderful if I could go and buy the winning ticket to a Powerball lottery and win, $100 million that would fund, and I could use that to fund mission for the rest of my life and do incredible things with it. But whenever I've been tempted to do that, I realize if I did that, it would short circuit individuals and churches from engaging in mission. And it's not the job of the lottery money or anyone else like that to fulfill the Great Commission. It's the job of the body of Christ. And if we've got just this big wad of cash that is allowing us to say, oh, well, I don't have to be involved personally in mission. Well, we can't do that. We have to own mission ourselves. We have to own obedience ourselves. So whether it's our rest, our devotional life, our marriage life, nobody else can control that. Only we can control what we are responsible for. You cannot delegate your own personal obedience to Jesus Christ. So in your own life, dear leader, whether you're a young emerging leader in your 20s or you're reaching your prime stride of in your 50s and 60s, where you are really doing well right now, there are things that you can apply from this, and you can learn what are the 2 or 3 things that you need to apply out of this talk that I've shared with you on this podcast. I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me an email at jroper@foursquare.org. I'd love to hear from you about how this has helped you. God bless you guys, and I hope you have a great week. It's your life. Now go live it.
Well, we're done now. Thanks for listening. This is Jeff Roper reminding you that the mission of God is too grand for mediocrity or average living. You were created for a purpose, and that purpose is found in the mission of God. It's your life. Now go live it.